You believe sorrow is silent until the dead begin to listen. You think a grave keeps secrets until tears wake what sleeps beneath. You never expect a king to kneel until he hears someone cry for his son. Story. Night fell over the ancient Silvervale castle, resting under a pale frozen moon. The wind moved like a whisper, quiet but full of grief. Candles burned along the walls, low and trembling as if they feared the shadows themselves. The vampire king, Alistair, walked through the courtyard alone. His long, dark coat dragged across the stone floor, carrying frost on its edges. His breath was cold, but his eyes burned like quiet embers. He rarely visited the graveyard at night, but something heavy pulled him there, something he could not name. As he stepped into the royal cemetery, he noticed a faint sound. It was not the wind, and it was not the night animals crying from far away. It was a small sob, warm and human, breaking into the cold silence. He followed the sound slowly, not wanting to disturb whoever was mourning. Then he saw her. A young maid dressed in worn black fabric knelt before a small grave covered in white roses. Her dark hair hid her trembling face as she clutched a single pink flower against her chest. Her body shook like she was holding back a storm. Alistair froze. She was crying over his son's grave. The grave of Prince Evander, the child who died centuries ago. No one was allowed to visit it without permission. No one dared because the king's grief was a law of its own. Yet she was here, grieving like she had known him, like she had lost him. Her voice broke through the cold air, soft and cracked. I am sorry I could not protect you. The king's eyes widened. Protect him. She continued, her words shivering, her tears staining the stone. You deserved warmth, little one, not fear. The king stepped forward, his voice low and steady. Who are you? He asked. She gasped and turned, her eyes swollen and shimmering under the moonlight. She looked terrified, but not because of him. It was a different fear, deeper, older. She bowed her head, shaking. Forgive me, your majesty, she whispered. I did not mean to intrude. Alistair studied her closely. She wore a simple servant uniform, yet there was something different about her presence. Something heavy, something familiar. He felt his instincts sharpen like a predator sensing truth. Tell me your name, he demanded quietly. Her fingers trembled against the cold stone. My name is Alara, she answered. Her voice was soft, but it carried a hidden wound. The king heard it instantly, like the sadness in her voice was louder than her words. Why do you cry over a prince you never knew? Alistair asked. She lifted her eyes. There was no fear of punishment in them now, only sorrow. And she whispered something that made the moon itself seem weaker. Because someone took him from me too. The air grew colder. Alistair did not move. For centuries, no truth had ever shocked him. Kings feared nothing, especially kings with fangs, yet her words struck him like a blade made of grief. What did she mean, taken from her? The king stepped closer, but Alara's shoulders tightened, as if she was preparing for pain. She held the pink flower against her heart like it was her only protection. This was no ordinary maid. And this was no ordinary morning. The graveyard torches flickered, as if listening. The moon watched, and the past began to wake. You think grief fades with time, until someone guards it like a living child. You believe death ends stories until a voice claims it remembers the stolen past. You expect a servant to obey, yet she speaks like a mother who lost a son. Story. Alistair stood tall before Alara, but his presence no longer felt like a king's command. It felt like a question he needed answered, a truth he had never dared to seek. The moonlight washed over the grave, illuminating the carved name of his son, Prince Evander of Silvervale. The air felt heavy, like the night itself was listening. Alara kept her eyes lowered, her tears dripping slowly onto the cold stone. Every drop looked like it carried years of grief, not moments. Alistair waited, but she spoke nothing more. Explain your words, he said, his voice steady but sharp. How was my son taken from you? Her chest tightened as if she had been stabbed with her own memories. She took a slow breath, her fingers still clinging to the flower. I served someone before I came here, she whispered, someone who hunted children with royal blood. Alistair felt a chill deeper than winter. The kingdom had many secrets, but none spoken so boldly by a maid. His eyes narrowed. Royal hunters are executed in Silvervale, he replied coldly. She nodded. Yes, your majesty, those found alive are executed. Her phrasing pierced the air like a hidden blade. Alistair stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. You are telling me you were part of them, he said. Alara's breath shook. I was forced to watch, she whispered. She looked up at him then with eyes full of broken promises. She was not confessing guilt, she was confessing pain. They took royal children from their families, she continued, sold them, experimented on them, drained their blood for secret power. I saw every child scream, but I could not save even one. Her voice cracked like glass. Alistair saw no deception, only a haunting truth, but it was her next sentence that tore through him like fire. One of those children, she said softly, was a vampire prince with silver eyes. Alistair's heartbeat pounded once like thunder inside his chest. His rage flared, but it was not directed at her. It rose against memories, against the night his own child vanished, against the lies told to him. You claim you knew my son before he died, he said. Alara closed her eyes. I did not know his name, she answered. I only knew he called for his father every night. Alistair's breath shivered. His son had cried for him, and he had never known. The grave between them seemed to ache, as if the stone itself remembered. Alara spoke again, her voice trembling like a fragile candle flame. When I escaped, I carried one child, but he died before sunrise. Alistair stared at her. She had run through danger, carrying a royal child she did not even know. She had risked her life for someone she wasn't destined to protect. I failed him, she whispered, her tears falling again. I held him in my arms when daylight took him away. He clung to my dress like he believed I could save him. The wind stilled. The cemetery torches dimmed. Every part of the night seemed to weep with her. Alistair spoke, but his voice no longer sounded like a king. It sounded human, raw. Why, he asked quietly, do you still visit him? Alara looked at the tomb, her fingers brushing the name carved into stone. Because he died believing someone cared for him, she said. I want that to remain true. The vampire king felt something break inside him, something he had buried with his son. He stepped back as if the gravity of truth was too heavy. Alara did not beg for mercy. She did not ask for forgiveness. She only cried for a child who was not hers. And that made her words more dangerous than any crime. In the echoing silence, the king whispered the first words he never expected to say. Alara, you will not be punished. She gasped, stunned. Instead of fear, her eyes filled with confusion. You will stay in this castle, Alistair continued. She trembled, unsure if she had heard him correctly. And you will tell me everything. The wind howled through the graves as if warning them both. For the dead had been disturbed. And truth was no longer safe. You think truth is a gift until it tears the world open. You believe memories heal until one detail destroys the past you trusted. You expect sorrow to end at a grave, yet it can resurrect monsters. Story. The next night arrived with restless shadows stretching across Silvervale. Thick clouds drowned the moon, leaving the castle wrapped in a cold, uneasy darkness. Guards whispered in fear, sensing something stirring beyond reason. Candles flickered as if the wind carried secrets instead of air. King Alistair had summoned Alara to the silent chamber, a hall reserved for royal confessions and punishments. Yet when she entered, there were no chains, no witnesses, and no table of cruel instruments. Only the king stood there, waiting, his eyes unreadable. Sit, he commanded quietly. She obeyed, but tension pulled at her breathing. She had faced death before, yet this felt different. This felt like standing before the truth she had feared more than execution. Alistair's voice broke the silence. You said you saw children taken for experiments. Alara nodded painfully. Describe what they did to them. Her throat tightened, but she spoke slow and trembling. They studied their blood. They believed royal blood could create unstoppable power. Vampire blood gave strength, but royal vampire blood created something else, something unnatural. Alistair leaned forward, his fists tightening against the table. What did they create? He asked. Alara swallowed, as if each word cut her from the inside. They were trying to build immortal weapons, not children. Something that could obey without question, something colder than a vampire but stronger than magic. The king's breath grew heavy. Children turned into weapons. His son among them. And my son, he whispered, what did they do to him? Alara closed her eyes, her voice breaking. They forced him to bleed every night, she said. He grew weaker, but his blood grew stronger. They believed if they drained enough, they could feed that power into their army. The king's rage exploded, but he didn't shout. It was quieter than thunder, but far more violent. They tortured a child for blood, he said through clenched teeth. Alara slowly lifted her head. He was the only one who resisted, she whispered. Alistair froze. What do you mean? She looked at him, her eyes trembling with a truth too heavy to carry alone. He never cried for them, he never obeyed them. He only called for his father, they could not break him, and that terrified them. The room fell still. The king who ruled nations with fear had a child who resisted darkness with loyalty, a son who believed his father would save him even when death came. Alistair's voice softened, a rare crack showing in his armor. Why did they kill him? Alara shook her head. They did not kill him, she whispered. Alistair froze. Time seemed to stop. She continued, her eyes full of sorrow. His body died, but his blood did not. The king's heart pounded like thunder. Explain. Alara took a slow, painful breath. Your son's blood was taken to create something stronger. They fed it to others. They believed they could raise a new royal from his sacrifice. The king's eyes widened, a cold shiver crawling through his bones. Someone out there carried his son's blood. Someone created with pain, not love. Someone who might claim the throne. Alara whispered the words no one should ever speak. A child made from the blood of a dead prince is walking somewhere alive. The candles flickered violently, as if the shadows themselves recoiled. Alistair's voice trembled with the fury of an ancient storm. Who took him? Who carries that blood? Alara looked at the floor, shaking. I never saw their face, she answered. The king slammed his hand on the stone table, cracking it, but the noise did nothing to change the truth hanging between them. A child born from royal blood. A stolen heir. A creature not raised but manufactured. And somewhere it lived. Alistair leaned closer, his voice low and dangerous. If this child returns, what will it be? Alara's eyes filled with dread. An heir without a heart, she whispered, a king without a soul. The wind outside screamed through the windows, rattling the ancient glass. The dead prince's blood was not finished. And neither was his legacy. You believe danger announces itself loudly until it enters wearing a familiar voice. You expect a threat to look monstrous until innocence becomes its disguise. You think the past is buried until its footsteps echo inside your home. Story. The castle awoke restless, though no alarm had been raised. Guards stood rigid at their posts, sensing something they could not see, as if the air itself was waiting for a name. Fog curled along the floors like a living creature, filling hallways with a silent warning. King Alistair walked through the throne corridor, his steps slow, controlled, but his mind relentless. The idea of a child born from Evander's blood haunted him. A stolen heir raised for power, not love. A weapon that might come seeking a throne it was never meant to hold. Alara followed at a respectful distance, but her presence felt like a heartbeat close to his. Her silence did not hide fear, it carried knowledge, knowledge that could destroy kingdoms. As they reached the main hall, a messenger rushed toward the king. He bowed deeply, sweat clinging to his brow. Your Majesty, he reported, a group of diplomats request audience. They come from the eastern citadel. They bring a child as a peace offering. Alara's breath vanished. A child? Alistair's voice sharpened to a blade. What child? They refused to explain, the messenger replied nervously. They said it was chosen by fate. Chosen by fate. The phrase struck like lightning. It echoed too perfectly, too deliberately. Alara stepped forward, trembling. Your Majesty, do not accept any child from the East, she warned. Their citadel was once home to the blood scholars. They worshipped the power of royal vampiric blood. Alistair's eyes narrowed. The scholars who experimented on children. The ones who drained Evander. He turned to the messenger. Bring them, the king commanded. When the hall cleared, Alara spoke softly. If they bring that child here, they do not offer peace. They offer war in a cradle. Alistair looked out through the towering windows, where fog clung to the gates like pale claws. Then we will see who is raising war, he said quietly, and we will not bow to a gift of blood. The hall doors opened. 6 diplomats entered, cloaked in white and silver, faces calm, practiced. At their center walked a small figure no older than 10, dressed in dark velvet, holding a polished cane like he had been born knowing how to command. His hair was black as storm clouds, his skin pale as moon frost. But it was his eyes that froze Alistair's breath. Silver, glimmering like the reflection of a blade. The same eyes his son once had. The child looked directly at the king, no fear, no confusion. His voice was soft, almost sweet. Your Majesty, he greeted, I have come home. Alara's hands shook violently, but she dared not speak. Alistair stared at the child, searching for evidence of humanity, some sign of innocence. But the child's gaze was too calm. Too controlled. Too knowing. The diplomat stepped forward, bowing low. We gift you a boy born with noble blood, he announced. A child who survived where others perished. He holds power meant for kings. Alistair's voice cut through the air. What name does he carry? The child answered before anyone else could speak. You may call me Lysander, he said, but if you wish, I can take the name your kingdom expects. Alistair felt the world tilt. Lysander. He did not claim Evander's name, but he offered to wear it. A weapon shaped as a choice. He was not claiming to be the dead prince. He was prepared to replace him. Alistair stepped closer, his voice edged in ice. Who told you to come here? Lysander smiled faintly, his silver eyes gleaming with unsettling warmth. No one commanded me, he answered. I came because your throne is lonely and I belong to a king who needs what was stolen from him. The diplomat smiled as if peace was being exchanged. Alara whispered so quietly the king barely heard. Do not touch him, do not let him near the blood of Silvervale. Lysander tilted his head slightly, as if he heard her despite the distance. Maid, he called gently, do you still cry for the one who died before me? His question pierced the room like a dagger dipped in mourning. Alistair stepped between them, his voice roaring without volume. This castle does not take gifts from criminals. The diplomats bowed deeper, unfazed. Then keep him, one replied. He is no gift, he is fate, and fate belongs to the throne it chooses. They turned and walked out, leaving the child behind. Lysander stood alone. Not abandoned. Claimed. He smiled again, soft and unsettling. Shall I meet my father now? He asked. Alistair looked at him with a fury that carried sorrow. I am not your father's. Lysander's silver eyes shimmered. Not yet, he whispered. And somewhere in the shadows of the hall, the torches dimmed. As if the dead prince's blood had recognized its new Veslio expect evil to shout, yet the quiet ones change destinies. You think a child seeks love until he learns to control affection. You believe a throne is protected by power, but blood rewrites loyalty. Story. Lysander remained in the grand hall, oddly comfortable beneath the cold high arches and silver banners. He did not tremble, did not wander, did not ask questions like any normal child entering an unknown kingdom. Instead, he stood perfectly still, as though the castle was not new to him but returning. King Alistair watched him from the throne steps, refusing to sit. Sitting would imply acceptance, and acceptance would crown the child with legitimacy. Alara stayed close to one of the pillars, silent but tense, like a flame trying not to burn the curtains around it. She had seen royal horrors. She understood how beautiful danger could look. Lysander walked slowly toward the throne as if the air itself bowed for him. He traced his fingers along the icy marble railing, reading the stone like a memory. How familiar, he murmured softly. Alistair's eyes hardened. Do not pretend this is your home. Lysander glanced back with a small, polite smile. Home is not where you are born, he said. Home is where your blood leads you. Alara flinched. The words sounded too old for someone so young. Your blood does not belong here, Alistair warned. Lysander tilted his head, unoffended. My blood is not the question, your majesty, he replied. The question is whose blood built your kingdom and who it truly answers to. That sentence struck the room like a whisper sharper than a blade. Before Alistair could reply, a guard entered hurriedly, bowing. Your majesty, the boy requires immediate testing. Our laws demand verification for royal lineage. Lysander studied the guard with unsettling calm. A test, he echoed, so you will measure what you do not understand. Alistair gave a curt nod to the guard. Take him, the king ordered, and use the ancient seal. Lysander paused at the word seal. His silver eyes lowered like a shadow across water. Are you sure, he asked quietly. Once awakened, the seal does not sleep again. Alistair stepped forward, his voice iron. I give commands, not warnings. Lysander bowed, not in obedience, but like he was humoring an elder. As you wish, your majesty, he whispered. Two guards escorted him out, though neither seemed confident they were escorting a child. The moment he left, the hall felt heavier, as if he had taken part of the moonlight with him. Alara approached Alistair quickly. Do not use the ancient seal, she warned. It binds blood to blood. If he carries royal essence, even stolen essence, it could bind him to the throne forever. Alistair's jaw tightened. If his claim is false, the seal will destroy him. And if it is true, she whispered, it will chain him to you. The king stared at her, his voice dropped lower. Then we will know what he truly is. Alara's breath shook. She looked into the king's eyes and saw something that terrified her more than Lysander's presence. Alistair was no longer afraid of losing his throne. He was afraid of losing the last piece of his son, even if that piece was a weapon. Lysander was guided into the Hall of Oathstones. It was ancient, older than Silvervale itself. Carved pillars stood like frozen giants, holding the weight of centuries. At the center rested a stone altar marked with glowing silver veins. The seal. The blood temple. Lysander stepped toward it calmly. Kneel, one guard commanded. Lysander smiled faintly. Kneeling does not determine truth, he said, only submission. Kneel, the guard repeated shakily. Lysander lowered himself, but not in obedience. Indecision. A priest entered, black robes trailing like smoke. He cut his palm and pressed it against the altar. The stone glowed. The priest lifted a silver dagger to Lysander. Place your hand upon the seal, he instructed. Lysander extended his palm slowly, as though giving the world permission to change. The dagger cut him gently. One drop of his blood touched the altar. The stone blazed with violent silver light. Guards stumbled backward. The priest gasped. The seal did not test him. It recognized him. The blood on the altar did not sit, it spread like roots returning to soil. The veins in the stone pulsed, alive as if something ancient had found a missing heartbeat. From the glowing stone, a whisper filled the air, a voice older than kings. Royal blood reclaimed. Lysander opened his eyes, and for the first time he looked less like a child and more like a prophecy. I told you, he whispered to the terrified priest. Blood finds its throne. You think destiny crowns the worthy until suffering demands a successor. You expect prophecy to choose heroes, yet blood remembers pain, not virtue. You believe a king protects his child, but sometimes he must save the world from him. Story. The seal's thunderous glow echoed through the ancient hall, striking every pillar with eerie silver light. The words royal blood reclaimed lingered like a curse, vibrating in the cold air. Guards backed away, some crossing their chests, others staring in disbelief. Lysander stood in the center, hands still bleeding, though the wound already closed. His breath was steady, his face calm, but something ancient moved behind his eyes, a silent storm too old for childhood. King Alistair and Alara arrived moments after the ritual, the echo of the seal still fading from the walls. Alara gasped when she saw the altar pulsing with silver light. The throne has accepted him, the priest whispered in horror. The seal does not lie. Alistair clenched his fists. Accepted or enslaved, he growled. Lysander turned, meeting the king's gaze without fear, without arrogance, only certainty. Neither, he said softly. The seal remembers the blood that built this kingdom, not the blood that claimed it. Alara stepped forward, her voice shaking. Evander was kind, she whispered to Lysander. He cried for his father, he never wanted power, what do you want? Lysander looked at her, not offended, not angry, only curious. You speak of him as if you held his heart, he replied, yet you never told the king you loved that child as your own. Alara's breath broke, her eyes filling because the child spoke truth with no cruelty. He did not expose her to shame, he exposed her honesty. I did, she whispered, and I still do. Lysander blinked slowly, something flickering in his silver gaze, confusion, softness, curiosity. Emotion, faint but real. Alistair moved closer. Do you remember him? He asked Lysander. Does any part of him live in you? The boy stared at the king, studying him like a reflection on a frozen lake. I do not remember his life, Lysander said, but I remember his pain. It lives in my blood like a memory made of fire. That sentence carved silence across the hall. The prince who died had left behind not love, not innocence, only suffering strong enough to resurrect itself. Alistair took a long, steady breath. You carry power stolen from my son, he said, but power stolen through pain is not a right, it is a wound, and a wound must be healed, not crowned. Lysander's expression changed, not anger, not defiance. Confusion. He had expected fear, hatred, or greed. He had been trained to replace a prince, not to be healed like one. Then what will you do with me? Lysander asked quietly. Alistair lowered his voice. I will not make you a king. The guards stiffened. The priest trembled. Lysander did not blink. Then will you destroy me? The question held no fear, No pleading, only logic, like someone taught to expect death for imperfections. Alistair stepped forward, kneeling to face him eye to eye. "No," he said gently, "I will raise you." Lysander froze. The seal stopped pulsing. Even the torches seemed to soften. Alara covered her mouth, tears streaming silently. Alistair continued, voice quiet, steady, breaking the oldest law of royal blood. "You are not my heir by right, you are not my child by choice, but you are the last echo of my son's suffering, and I will not let pain become a ruler." Lysander's lips quivered, just slightly, as though his body did not know how to hold what he felt. "You would teach me," he whispered, "instead of using me." "Yes," Alistair answered. "You would protect me," Lysander asked, "instead of fearing me." "Yes," Alara whispered through tears. Lysander looked from one to the other, his voice barely audible. "Then teach me how to live with a heart that was not born but crafted from sorrow." Alistair stood and placed a hand gently on Lysander's shoulder, not claiming, not forcing, only accepting. "You will not be a king forged by blood," he said. "You will be a child who learns what my son never had enough time to learn, love." Lysander looked down, silver eyes trembling like moonlight breaking over water. The seal's glow faded to silence. The past did not vanish. It found a different ending. And in the graves beneath Silvervale, the wind moved gently, as if a little prince finally rested, knowing someone else would not endure his suffering alone. A maid who had tried to save him. A king who finally understood him. And a child born not to rule an empire, but to heal one.